Welcome to the Unexpected Podcast. This is Justin Mahwikizi, and today's guest is Nimrod Avraham, who brings a great, rich story and background towards a show that he's producing that inspires and communicates unity and peace. Nimrod Avraham, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Justin, for having me on this amazing podcast.
Absolutely. You're a creator of a show called God's Gang. But before we talk about the show, can you tell us who you were as a child? What kind of boy grew up or grows up to dedicate their life to peace?
So, backtracking my life, it's not easy to try and figure out myself from a child's perspective, but I can do my best. And so I was born in 1972. I'm 54 years old. No mobile phones and no internet. I grew up in a very quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the big metropolitan in Israel called Tel Aviv, not far from a university called Bar Ilan. And we were about 50 children at the same age group. So we everybody knew each other. We went to the same kindergarten, went to the same elementary school, and then to high school. The big split happened when each of us needed to recruit to the Israeli Defense Force. It's an obligation for any Israeli. As a kid, I remember that I really liked staying outside, playing with my friends, from the hide and seek games and all the way to different sports. But I had a very geekish kind of consciousness. I was very drawn to what is called fantasy books, such as Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and sci-fi. I used to read a lot of Asimov as a child, and I was very fascinated by the space program and by aliens. 78 for me, 77 was a major game changer when Star Wars was introduced to the world. So I became a big Star Wars fan. And as a teenager, I played Dungeons and Dragons. Imagine that. We didn't have the computer games. Well, we had the early computers, the Sinclair Spectrums and the Commodores.
Yeah.
But we played role playing games. So I was a big Dungeons and Dragons fan. And I had a dream. I wanted to be Israel's first astronaut. And I realized that the only way to become an astronaut is to go and become an Air Force pilot.
Uh-huh.
So when I joined the Israeli army, in a miraculous way, even though I wasn't a great scholar, I was admitted to the Air Force Academy. So for the first year, I trained as a pilot at the Israeli Air Force. I didn't graduate, thank God. And now in retrospective, I say thank God, because I was not involved in any conflicts or combats, which allows me to tell a story of love and peace and unity. But I always had the dream of flying airplanes. So I nearly finished my private license on a Cessna, not on an F-15.
Okay.
So I guess, there's a book, a beautiful book by Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingstone Seagull, and the most memorable phrase of this book, soar high and see far. So I guess I was, as a child, as a teenager, but also as an adult, I tend to invent myself alternatives to the current reality, because now when you see what's going on in the world, definitely we need a change, and the sooner the better.
No, I agree. I mean, it leads to the next question I had. You know, growing up in Israel, like what first shaped your understanding of conflict, identity, and coexistence?
So I must say that, and I believe this shaped me as a human being in a very good way. I grew up in a very unique family. My father was a Holocaust survivor. Um, Both my parents passed away in the last few years, but my father was born in 1932 in France. And as a child, his parents paid a French farmer to hide him from the Nazis.
Mm,
Um, my mom became orphan when she was 20 years old, and she had no siblings, no brothers and sisters. So both of them experienced life through, I want to say, some really cruel, what seems to be cruel moments. My father became a life lover based on his experiences as a child as a Holocaust survivor. And my mom was, I want to say, she felt a bit victimized by life, having no brothers, having no sisters, no parents leaving her in a young age. So it was a bit complicated, to sustain both parents' energies and life stories. But I would give it to them that they were both very extreme in their beliefs that peace is the way.
mm,
My father, although he was French, Polish origins, he taught himself Arabic, and he had many Arab friends and Bedouin friends. And they were both a part of this organization back in Israel that was called Peace Now.
okay.
And when I still believed in politics, they were what is called the extreme left, always voting for the parties that promoted peace, that believed that coexistence is the way. And I would say they were very um, big humanitarians, meaning that they loved people, and they never saw through the things that divide us or polarize us, not the color of the skin, not the language you speak, the cultural background, your religious background. That it doesn't, for them, it was not the things that one should follow. One should follow values.
Mm,
That's what they taught me. um, so with that, I want to say realizations, outtakes, and mindset. I went to the world wishing for peace, and I consider myself a friendly human being. So I managed to gather friends from all over the world, just like we have in our show God's Gang,
yes,
because I believe this is the way. This is also the godly way.
it is indeed. Um, Now, you spent years in what you call work of matter
Mhm.
before turning toward what many would describe as the work of spirit. What
Mhm.
does that phrase mean to you? Share it with our audience.
So I'm 54 years old. Until the age of 36, I thought that we are finite, that there is no higher governing consciousness, energy, God, source, creator. I was an atheist. I thought that science is the way. And at the age of 36, I've basically managed to live through a fire that took place in the building I was living, in a very bad uh, moment in my life. I was post divorce. I was trying to rebuild my career. That's the world of matter. The matrix requires us to pay rent and alimony and buy our food. It's not that I go and hunt my food and live in the tents that I've built
Built yourself. Right.
somewhere. Um, so the building that I was living in, it was caught on fire, and I managed to survive this event. And I've decided I live not far from a Reformic synagogue, which in this synagogue there was a Torah book, the first five stories of the Bible, and that was handwritten by my grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah, there's an occupation in Judaism which is called the Sofer Stam. I don't know how to translate it into English, but these are trained individuals who write every letter and every word of the Torah with their own hands. And and I come from such a family, from my mother's side, and because I didn't die during that day. There's a praying that Jews can say for getting their life saved, and I decided to go and say thank you
Yes.
for not finishing my enrollment here back then.
Yes.
So with that said, um, I went and did the thanking on the book of my grandfather, and it initiated a very amazing chain of events that happened right after I said the prayer. It's another story, I guess, maybe for another interview, but that made me realize that what I've experienced was in no way a coincidence. And if it's not coincidence, then there is this hidden hand that basically interacts in our life, in our world, that many people, especially religious people, will call it, divine intervention,
Yes.
God. And so imagine myself at 36 years old, experiencing for the first time in my life some kind of doubts in regard to the physical reality, understanding that I might well have been wrong for most of my life, thinking that we're finite, that matter is the way, and experiencing the world through what is called the ego, the me.
Yes.
And I'm a Nimrod, right? That was my name, Nimrod Avraham, given by my mother. And Nimrod means to rebel. He rebelled in God, the Elohim that thought he was a brave hunter, until his ego shook him from being humble and took him all the way to building this tall building, also known as the Tower of Babylon, only to be facing a very kind fellow called Avram, telling him that he is wrong about himself and the Elohim, and there is a God, there is one God, creator. I decoded a lot of the things that happened back in the days,
Right.
just to realize that Nimrod, I guess, thought that the fallen angels are the creator, which is why he had these icons, these dolls of big deities in his place, where Avram told him, "No, bro, there's somebody who's
Something.
there's a CEO, there's a CEO. You're talking to the vice presidents." Um, so
In some form, your life has been the name your mother gave you, Nimrod Avraham. That contradiction, that transition, that transformation, spiritual transformation.
yes, it's the duality in Kabbalah, which is the mystical Judaistic art of basically the hint and the secrets of the Torah, of the five first books. In Kabbalah, there's the tree of life, and in the tree of life, there are the 10 godly values that needs to be basically brought to here, to our world, to kingdom. And there are two things that stand on two opposing sides. One is bravery, gvura, and the other one is kindness,
Mm.
chesed. And in Kabbalah, kindness is associated with Avraham. He was a very kind and gentle, and um, he welcomed everyone to his. He was a free lover. Um, and there was Nimrod, who was considered to be, was described as the first brave human being in the Torah, a brave hunter for the Elohim, while in fact the bravery is associated with Isaac, and fallen bravery is associated with Nimrod,
Ah,
because he did not manage his ego well. He lost it. Um, so it's basically dualism. It's on one hand, having, a very loving, kind, compassionate side to you based on one name given, and on the other hand, you understand that the ego is not serving you. And how do you balance? How do you mitigate this in a physical world where where we're dominated through ego and
oh
decision
yeah, the
making?
marketing, the advertising, the value systems in some cultures. That's all.
Yeah,
It's the ego.
yeah.
Um, it's a fascinating story, and I thank you for sharing it. Um, if we go into some of the work you were doing, back to you worked for a short term at Disney.
Mhm.
What did that teach you about human nature that most people would never imagine? I think it was Disney in Israel per se, right? Not necessarily here in the States.
Mhm. It was the Disney channels, and since I was not in any way spiritual, I was very excited to be a part of what is called corporate America.
Hmm.
And that was an opportunity for me to basically be in an environment where I felt like a great swimmer, because I grew up, on Disney cartoons
Yes.
and comic books. And for me, working for a company which is obviously one of the leading global brands in the world, getting paid for having my TV turned on and having Spider-Man and Transformers and Power Rangers, as part of the things that, oh, I now need to think of what's the best way to promote the new season of Power Rangers for children in the summer.
Yes.
For me, it's a perfect honeypot, because I got paid for basically being ultra creative and engaged with things that I was so connected with. It was an amazing experience. That's also where I had a download about God's Gang. I was invited to Disney Executive Summit, where 120 Disney executives, all from the Disney channels, gathered together in Orlando, and we went on the Disney cruiser, and I was a marketeer, and as marketeers, we were asked what ideas we can bring Disney to make Disney shine, when they had this yellow sponge knocking on their heads, and an adventurous girl with her booted monkey and speaking Spanish and English, and they were both
Dora. Yeah.
Dora, yeah, Dora and SpongeBob
Yeah.
by Nickelodeon.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and they really did well back then. So Disney was trying to think what we can do, and I offered Disney. I stood on stage in front of 120 Disney executives, and I told them I have two great ideas. Um, I have no idea where the second idea came. But the first idea was to fly the first kid into orbit back
Okay.
in 2006.
Okay.
Obviously, that didn't fly literally. I was very fascinated by the, it was before SpaceX and Blue Origin,
Origin, yeah.
but there was Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's and Virgin Galactic, and I sent them an email. Hi, I work for Disney. How cool it would be if we fly a kid into some orbit. Um, so it's a, it's still a risky, I wouldn't say, thing to do.
Hey, if you could find an insurance company to actually underwrite that, that could have been a thing. I just don't know how many insurance companies would bet their balance sheet on that.
Yeah, I need to ask Katy Perry, I guess, who insured her. Um, so with that being said, I told them, well, you paid $5.2 billion to purchase Fox Kids, Saban's library. Your leading brand there is the Power Rangers. Make them interfaith. That
Mm.
was when basically like the eureka moment. I have an idea, and I basically shared it with the Disney executives, and thank God they never did it. And when I left Disney, I sat down and I said, "Oh, how cool it would be to create the first interfaith group of superheroes." And back in 2007, I basically sat down and designed the entire God's Gang universe with the heroes that are now a part of the gang, and the baddies and everything. I was just lacking what is called the spiritual training. I call it my Jedi training,
Yes. All right.
which was missing. And so when I left Disney, that was around the time where I had the realization that there is a God. And that opened a new chapter in my life where I went to search for answers. So I went really deep into understanding the Bible, and especially the first five books. And I felt I'm missing a lot of things I wanted to get a deeper understanding of. So I've started looking at Kabbalah as a source for answers, but there was also the Book of Creation, which basically now I understand it's an operating system. We're in a simulation where you need to understand how to write the code. In Book of Enoch, the Sumerian scripts, ancient knowledge that basically when you triangulate different parts of it, you start understanding the deeper, I want to say, parts of the stories that you read in the Bible. Also in the Talmud, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem Talmud, you can find a lot of answers, and that can confuse, um, in order to know, not just the stories, but the secrets behind the stories. You need to have a very open mind and an open consciousness, and you need to prepare yourself, your vessel, very, very well. Otherwise, you might freak out because it's scratching more and more layers of our reality, and the reality that we were taught through the different systems like schools. They do not tell you that you have an antenna inside your brain, which is called the pineal gland, and it needs to be activated. And the way you can activate it is by proper breath work, and breath work can release a molecule which is called dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is endogenic, and you connect to what is called the quantum field. But this conversation can go to so many different ways. I don't want to confuse the audience.
No, no, no.
And
The goal is to understanding, who you are and how you came with the project, the God's Gang. Now, tell us briefly. We'll go deeper into it. But what is the concept of God's Gang? How long has it been out? And for our audience to understand what you've created through this process and this journey.
so first of all, God's Gang is for us, for me, is an antidote. And we need to understand what we are basically given an antidote for. And the answer is the lowest form of living, which is fear. Okay, I see the polarity in life on a scale which is the lowest form of existence is managed and induced by fear, and the highest form of existence is, maybe you can guess,
Uh,
love.
love. Yes.
Love, love, love. So when we as human beings now interact, in the physical reality, and I don't know, let's talk about mainstream news.
Yes.
And I live in Israel.
Right.
99% of the narratives that are communicated through mainstream news are basically activating the sympathetic mechanism, which is the fight or flight, which activates the fight or flight.
Yes.
And when we're constantly basically operating in a surviving mode, we cannot create a reality. So we need to find an antidote for not being thrown into the back seat, because we're co-creators, and we can create our reality if we just know how reality works.
Okay.
So God's Gang for me is a way to basically use the same platforms and the same mediums of mainstream news or big streamers and channels, and that is storytelling. And God's Gang is an action adventure comedy which pulses on a spiritual heart, which basically understand that, okay, we need to entertain on one hand. Um, on the other hand, we can, I don't want to use the word educate, we can set an example through the stories of how we can basically thrive
Mm.
as humans, as children, as adults, in a world where there is love, but we need more of it. There is light, but we need more of it. And I'm still amazed by the fact that the God's Game team, since I registered the company in April 21. Not no, I never produced animation, never written a script.
Wow.
And I worked for venture capital. I launched startups. I was in executive positions in publicly traded companies and in private companies, and I did a lot of investment banking. And I invested in startup companies. One might be very relevant for you. It's a health management organization in the States called Antidote Health, which is available in Ohio, Arizona, and we're now rolling out to Georgia and Texas.
Oh.
Basically trying to fix the health system under the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. But putting this aside, um, we wanted to deliver stories to children and to entertain them that basically are an example of what kind of society we want to be living in. And how cool is that? That the four heroes are basically representing what is now known as the biggest conflicts of our planet, like the interreligion conflicts, which are thousands of years. We've been told that Jews and Muslims are the enemies. We are their enemies, etc., etc. While in fact, the deeper you go into spiritualism, you understand you have no enemies, and the only enemy that one have is the reflection in the mirror.
Yes.
We are our own enemies. And I wish I realized that when I saw The Empire Strikes Back, when Luke Skywalker went to complete his Jedi training at Yoda's Dagobah planet system. He fights, he goes into a cave and supposedly he fights Darth Vader, just to realize that he's fighting himself. And so, with that deep understanding of how things work, and based on the fact that I live in a world where many Muslim, Christian, Hindu friends, there is no justification to experience fear, divisiveness, polarization, and add to it that it's also prophesized. In if you read like different prophecies, there's the end of times, Armageddon,
Sure.
in but there's right after comes what is called redemption days, the 1,000 years of sabbatical on our planet, where a sheep and a wolf would dwell together, and we shall no longer carry arms. And so why wait?
No, I hear you. Who are the characters behind you? Tell us who the heroes are of God's gang.
So we have four amazing heroes. Right here is Chris Cross. Obviously, he's representing the Christian, and he's I watched a lot of Bruce Lee movies, and you can see the Gene Kelly
To the dragon.
references.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to revive the funky, cool um, hero in the group where everybody would adore him. Like you go to Chris if you want to be comforted. Um, Alongside to Chris, there's Sue Muslim, the Ya Habibi, Alan Wasalan, the chef of the gang, who's huge in size, but as big as he is, his heart is even bigger, and he's very, very strong, as you can imagine. And he's a great storyteller and a great cook. Um, and we have Taekwondo Hindu right here,
Right.
who is, I want to say that the nature connection for the gang. She can speak with animals and plants and birds, and um, she's like the big sister of the group.
Okay.
And our boy Ninju. Um, so he's the Jewish hero. We wanted to create someone that can be identified by non-Jewish people. So he's a big, nerdish, over analyzing, brave soul, an aspiring basketball player,
Uh-huh.
and he learns amazing lessons while he's trying to overanalyze and overthink and how to overcome the different challenges that they go through the different adventures. They are managed and spawned by a canine called Miss Dogma, who is their dispatcher. Because we
Ah,
the show is not about faith or religion. It's an actual adventure, action adventure comedy, super spiritual. But we know when we understand how sensitive is religions
sure.
to the different people who believes in their religion. So when we decided to bring the representative without going into what may become sensitive for some of the audience.
Right.
And we believe that everything that is basically, if you really understand what religion is trying to teach you, it's trying to teach you love. So if that's the baseline of a God's game, to be a group of best friends saving the world together. And they also have I don't know if it's up in the on the roll up. There's a dove there. There you call her a pigeon,
Okay.
called Le Dove, an aerial saboteur. So they need the eye in the sky.
Yes.
And with these amazing people, they were recently joined also by a Buddhist forest dweller, Kung
Okay.
Fuda.
Okay.
And with their friends, and they fight darkness, they fight evil, and they win. They win because they're amazing.
I love it.
So far, we created 8 5-minute episodes, so we have 40 minutes of total animation. And I've never imagined that the head writer would be a 5 Emmy and a Grammy winner.
Wow. Okay. I love it.
Worked for Conan O'Brien and the Oscars and Job Stewart and Angry Birds and Ben 10. Our director is an Emmy-winning director. He worked on Transformers Cyberverse and Vampirina and The Oddbods. We have an amazing advisory board coming from Hollywood, but we also have an interfaith advisory board. So since we are presenting different cultures and different faiths, we want to make sure that we're not going into territories where we might be touching sensitive topics. So every script is being approved by an interfaith advisory board. We have two imams, a rabbi, a pastor, a Buddhist Shaolin disciple, Ching Ching, a Kabbalistic channeler. It's a crazy, wonderful organization that just want to bring hope to the world when needed most.
Listen, I resonate with this message. My own story. I left banking to study poverty, and over 8 years, I interviewed over 30,000 people. And the way I did it to source a randomized sample of people from all walks of life is I moonlighted as a rideshare driver in Chicago. And the more people that I met and talked to about different concepts, the more I realized what your team has realized is how common our battles are. Fear is always at the center. Trying to do the best you can for your children so they can do better than you. Whether you have $1 billion or you have negative $800 in your account, it's the same system that's being run, the operating system, just in a different perspective. And understanding that you've assembled, especially a board from a religious perspective, so they can understand that you're presenting the best product you can to your viewers. I resonate with that and that philosophy. Now, why animation instead of books, documentaries, speeches, or politics to try to send this message? What's so powerful about animation from your perspective?
It's a very popular medium.
And effective.
And effective. So obviously, kids are very drawn into animation, and kids are our primary target audience. And we wanted to speak in what is called eye level, and be able to basically shape their minds into what is called the unity and love energy that is the main power behind the show. Also, I'm a big an animation fan. I still go to sleep sometimes. Don't well, I'm on your podcast, but I can watch SpongeBob or Rick and Morty or Family Guy before I fall asleep.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Family Guy. That's pure entertainment there.
Always in listen. Seth Griffin is no, sorry, forgot the name of the creator of Family Guy. He's a brilliant guy.
Yeah. So was it difficult convincing people that that children from different backgrounds, faith backgrounds, could be heroes in the same story? Not just children, but like heroes of backgrounds. How was the reception? One, how did the actual executives at Disney react? I don't know if you have any anecdotes when you pitched that idea back in 2007, 2006, or how did you assemble the board and the team and some of the funding to just get going, and what kind of pushback did you get, and how did you manage it all?
So it's a great question. In 2006, when I pitched it on the Disney Executive Summit, the response was amazing. People liked it. They even started doing auditions. I'll give it to Disney, but it fell. And I guess that one of the reasons for it not to go through was because it was sensitive.
Yes.
And you realize, especially now when you see what is being streamed through the different streamers, they're trying to minimize their risk, because there's a lot of let's say noise right now in the entertainment industry. AI, not AI, ROI. How do you create it? So I would say um, people are now leaning into taking things that have a higher chance of being successful in terms of the ratings that they generate. So we understand that for God's Game to be successful, obviously going now on platforms like Disney or Netflix is not going to happen until we're going to have 30 million subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is which is far from the current figures. Um, the response from everyone who's on board the God's Gang project is amazing. I never expected or imagined um, that people of this caliber would be a part of our journey. Um, because they were all believing in the values that we're promoting through the show. But with that being said, the acceptance of the show. So we are, maybe experimenting is not the right word, but we're on different social platforms, and different social platforms obviously have different behaviors of their audiences. So just to give you, a clear answer, on YouTube, you can see the full episodes alongside reels and shorts that are basically either supplementary or a part of messages that we're trying to deliver in to the audience. The response on YouTube of people who complete watching the entire episode is amazing. Like the like ratio is 98%. I would say 80% of the comments are very positive and people love it, but they need to watch it in fully. And why do I say this? On Instagram, we have a channel. Unlike YouTube, where there's 1.6 million subscribers, on Instagram, we have 20 something thousand subscribers. But just in the last 6 months, we had 14 million organic views.
Wow.
And we had a clip where Ninju and some Muslim, they need to take down an alien spaceship because they're trying to steal the blue whales. And Ninju is the smallest of the group that can jump on the water spout coming from the whales. And basically, some Muslim serves him what we call a hot falafel.
Okay.
Which is an exploding falafel.
Okay.
And we thought how cool that would be to see Chris, Ninju, some Muslim work together and take down
Take down the aliens to save the Earth.
Exactly.
Whales.
While this specific part of the episode, and I spoiled a lot here, received 5.5 million views.
Wow.
130,000 or maybe more likes.
Wow.
And 300,000 link shares, copies of the link. And without the really nasty comments that I've deleted, we have about 6,000 and something comments. Half of the comments are super anti-Semitist.
Oh, wow.
So Ninja is not getting a lot of love through the comments, the Jewish character. We had a lot of people asking us, "Oh, you needed to give the Muslim a bomb," and I can only understand why they're writing it, and I can only be optimistic that what we did is basically we gave a very small fraction of a whole story that creates a very immediate emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
And the catharsis can only happen when they watch the full episode and understand the full context of the.
I see. There's an arc. to the story.
Exactly.
Yeah, and unless you see the full story, you're missing the message.
Yes.
So that's that's the impact of the short clips where you're not getting the full context. But at the same time, it's generating some type of conversation that maybe a small percentage of the folks that wrote those comments might watch the whole one, and over the long term, there might be a bigger impact. And I think that's what's built into your mission.
Yes, and for a long period of time, I commented on until it became just I could not spend my entire day commenting to people.
Yes.
But I invited the audience to watch the full episode. I've had one-on-one interactions with people who started as free haters and became big fans of the show. People coming from Christianity and Islam. It was very important for me to try and not compromise on the fact that we are a show about love. We are a show about unity. We're a show that promotes compassion and kindness and gratitude and empathy. So it's so pure, Justin.
Yeah.
It will take time to get it, and we understand it. And it's a unique story. The world is not used to see an interfaith group of superheroes sailing the world together. And
here's what you're describing, and that's why. But number one, it's going to take time. My father spent many years trying to teach me the word patience, what it truly means. And he would send me emails while I was in investment banking. You know, he had those crazy days when somebody loses $1 million or makes $10 million. And he would always tell me the word patience. And I didn't learn it until decades later, where, it's what you guys are trying to do in banking. We call it change management, or in corporate America, you call that change management. And it's starting a process that takes time to adjust fully. But in the meantime, you may have onesies and twosies wins. And those are the ones that should give you that energy to keep going. Because you see the trend, but the trend is never usually fully noticed by the market until much, much later. And so you're part of the real story. We as viewers are just part of that short intervals. But change is very important. And but that's what tells me that it's going to work long term. And so, keep at it. And trying to keep up with those commentators, it's a lose-lose game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I listen. I took a some would call it stupid, some would call it brave or bold decision. That's what I'll be doing for the rest of my life.
Outstanding.
Basically, God's Gang is my life's mission. It's my sole reason to be here, embodied in a Nimrod Avraham, in a country where there is not a dull moment. But thank God, literally thank God, that I've learned to manage the way I think, manage the way I see things, and I'm very thankful and optimistic that everything is okay now. Everything is okay, and it will be okay later.
I'll tell you. Number one, it's always going to be, it will be okay later. I'll tell you an experience I had on a week when I was still researching for the book. By the way, my research, after 30,000, I published a book called The Manufacturing of Poverty. And in that same week, I drove two women suffering both from cancer at different times. One was a Christian woman, African-American, who lived in Chicago, elderly, but from Mississippi. And I was driving her to her cancer treatment, and we had a great conversation. And this is a lady who had a few months left of her life. But when I dropped her off, she wanted to pray for me. And I couldn't, in that moment, I was very surprised and emotional in the sense that here's a person who knows her life is ending. But she wants, instead of me praying for her, she wanted me to pray for me. And then later on that week, I drove an elderly woman in the evening, a Jewish lady, who, as we were driving back to her home, gave me her whole story, introduced me to, there's a Israeli, I guess now he's Israeli, a rapper called Nissim Black, who's in Israel now, was originally from Seattle. I didn't know about Missing Black, and she's teaching me this hip hop history. And in the meantime, she's saying prayers for me and my family. And when I dropped her off, she introduced me to her husband. This is also a lady who had a few months left, but they were concerned about doing good and connecting with whoever they were connecting with. Different faith, same motivation, because they knew that their time on this earth was finite. And that to me, your show and your concept and who you are as you're talking to me resonates much. I fully understand what you're trying to do. And eventually the world will catch on. So, and I hope I'll be part of that journey and helping you here in Chicago in the States.
You are already a part of the journey and the story.
Thank you. Now, which character in God's gang is most like Nimrod Avraham?
Chris, definitely.
Chris, yeah?
Yeah, Chris. Although, if I'll go into, I do daily meditations and sun gazing and tree hugging. I would say it's a mix between Chris and Taekwondo.
Okay.
I'm very connected to my feminine energy. I'm a father of 3 daughters.
Oh, that comes with that.
Yeah.
But which character challenged you the most personally?
Ninja, obviously.
Yes. Okay. Okay. That's amazing. Now, if we quickly get back to my audience is also full of investment bankers and corporate guys. If you don't mind, your other side of your career is important in this conversation as well. And you helped build companies, led marketing teams, and worked on venture capital. What did those years teach you about what motivates people, not just in business, but what did you see motivated people as you were doing those experiences?
So this is where I need to be careful, but I would say profit.
Yes. Yes.
Although I think it's shifted now, as I became very concerned about how to be a good human being, I'm now more associated with people within the business industry who are, share the same mindset, how we can improve the world. But obviously, the financial world works on bottom lines, and bottom lines are gains and profits. But now I understand that, build something good, bring value, and the value would basically will eventually transform into revenues and profits.
Okay.
That's yeah.
One last question on the startups, marketing, human behavior world. You were involved with Get Taxi, during the transportation revolution. Looking back, were you building technology, or were you really trying to change human behavior? What was your motivators?
So obviously, I would say the major motivation for Get Taxi, which is, I believe, very aligned with the Uber Lyft philosophy, is to give an outstanding experience in the world of private transportation, where you want to basically have the best way to get from point A to point B, and technology was the enabler. So definitely, Get Taxi, which is now called Get, was launched in what we call a broken market in terms of the taxi, where you either needed to hail a taxi on the street, or you needed to call a dispatcher, not knowing who's going to be picking you up, where he is. No transparency in regard to the fare, the cost of a ride.
Yeah.
And when we launched Get Taxi, after the first market that we launched, it was in Israel. It was like taking a candy from a kid. Basically, we became a household name in a year, just because the customer experience was so well crafted. And I remember when I sat down with the founder, with Dave Weiser, and I basically, okay, let's think what would differentiate the service from existing service, and let's even see how we can bring new layers of amazing the customer inside the taxi themselves. So we offered mobile charging and free Wi-Fi and a very courteous driver, and we even gave an affiliate program through the taxi, basically getting the customers inviting their friends and getting free rides and loyalty points, and full transparency of where the taxi, so you got control, how much it's going to cost you. So it was really changing um, um, a system that was back in the days was somewhat broken.
Right.
We fixed it.
That's great. If we go, what have children who you produce product for? What have children taught you about peace that adults seem to forget?
I'll try to answer the question from a different side. As a parent, in we are in the role of educators
Correct.
and parenting, and in for many years, we follow the footsteps of our parents, and for me, and mom, don't be angry at me, but my mother threatened me and yelled at me and chased me all over when I did bad. Um, so growing up, growing to be a parent, I knew what I was taught. Just to understand that I was so wrong, and basically, there's only one way to educate a child, and that's be the example of what you want him to become. There's no other way. The biggest cliche: monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
And if I'll yell, my kid will yell. If I'm not gonna be compassionate to others, my kid is not gonna be compassionate to others. So I've learned that we and that also relates to the spiritual studies. Everything works in a way that we project and mirror and reflect. So I want a beautiful world to be reflected at me, and in order for this to happen, I need to be a beautiful person.
Mm.
If you understand what I'm saying. So and obviously kids are coming. If you don't contaminate their minds and their thoughts, and you let them be, you realize that you have a very smart young human being that can become an amazing human being for the sake of whole humanity.
No.
So we definitely need to be an example as parents, and we need to believe that our children deserves a great future and great life, and to live without fears, and in a world where we're building bridges and not bombing them.
No, I agree. I agree.
Right.
Um, and I kind of know what the answer is going to be, but it's a very important question to me, and I always ask it to folks who are as mission driven as you. If every world leader was required to watch one episode of God's Gang, what lesson would you hope that they would learn after watching the full episode, not just a clip?
Um, we can overcome everything with the right mindset and the right activation of the heart. We can build a beautiful world, a world of kindness, and that's what we need.
No, we do. Um, Nimrod Avraham, what gives you hope when the headlines today seem determined to convince us that division is inevitable? What gives you hope in this world?
My reality. Basically, when you realize that there's a gap between the headline and what you're experiencing in your personal life, you understand that this headline means nothing. It does not reflect, my day to day in any way. And I became tired of listening to commenters on the television and to wise people who are fear mongering. I'm very tolerable to people who speaks on ways for us to unite, to overcome the divisiveness, and to bridge the gaps between us. So if a politician would go, I'm better, and basically creates his philosophy based on me against the other, rather than how I can serve all of us, I would not follow.
Good. It's a great answer, by the way. Earlier in the episode, as the last question, you spoke about an experience that you had where you survived a fire, and then you went to a synagogue that had a book that your great grandfather wrote.
Yeah, yeah.
And that to me was such a testimony of his legacy, in not knowing how your work could impact not just your bloodline, but others in the future. And so my question to you, for as a last question here, is when your great grandkids ask about Nimrod Avraham, what do you hope they're told about? What do you hope is said about you to them?
That I was a visionary who lived his vision. I was not a man who talks. I'm a man who walk his talk.
Excellent. Sir,
And
it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for gracing us with these words of kindness and wisdom. And I hope that this episode helps propel more for your show. But I'm sure we're going to have more conversations, and hopefully we have you as a guest again in the future.
would be more than happy. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you for the great questions, and it's been a real pleasure and honor being here.
Sir, yes, sir. We'll be in touch very soon. And have a great evening there. Thank you for staying up for us.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.